Sensualist TV. Tonight, here we got Mike from the wonderful state of Maryland, the home of Adam Schiff, and me, Tony Rodriguez from LA County. Hope
The
everybody's
other
having
home
a
of
great
Adam
night.
Schiff.
Yeah, Adam Schiff is my congressman, but he lives in Maryland. I like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Sounds like a great plan. So I want to start off with that explosion in New York. Um, you know,
yeah. I was just reading about it and listening to some newscasts.
initially, of course, it was a terrorist attack initially, um, but now they don't know. I think the mayor said that it wasn't a terrorist attack. Um, don't know, don't have a lot of details. There's a lot of speculation. Um, I don't know if you saw the video. I saw the video, the car flying off and hitting that wall or whatever he hit or she hit.
Yeah, I saw it.
What are your thoughts?
Well, the bomb tech said they've never seen an explosion that big with a car flipping over like this looked like it did in the video.
Right,
So I think they're trying not to get people worried because tomorrow's the Thanksgiving Day parade,
right.
and this was the New York area, the Canada, New York area. So they're now saying they're looking for a second car, but
Oh,
they're not saying too much about it.
it's pretty interesting because that's probably the easiest border to do any crazy stuff at this point because everybody's paying attention to the southern border and nobody's paying attention to the northern border.
Yeah, they've tried a few different ones. They did one I think over Western Canada coming in through Washington, wanting to go to LAX to do something, and the
Yeah,
guys got caught. So they'll take their shots where they can.
and actually, today and tomorrow will be great days to do something, to the U.S., right? Because
Oh,
everybody's kind of
definitely.
relaxed. People aren't paying attention. They're more concerned with of course, family, friends, shopping, that kind of thing. So, um, perfect timing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, lucky NYPD is on the ball as far as blocking streets off with dump trucks and stuff like that. But look at the Boston Bombers when they were up there. All they had to do was walk in with their backpacks and create a little havoc through that. And you never know,
Well, no, you know what? 9/11 happened. You never know anything anymore, right?
right? Right?
We're not as safe as we think we are. Not just with local crime and hostilities, but we don't know who's in the country. We just don't know. Just have no idea.
Exactly.
We have no idea. And I think sometimes I know we kind of want to police up the rest of the world and all that, but kind of like your family, right? Your family comes first before your neighbors, right?
Right.
Um, Same. That's the way I think, right? I got to take care of my family first, then I can take care of my neighbors, right? And I think the current leadership lacks that. I don't know if it's because they don't want to, or because they're just not focused on what's important to us, the American people, um, which is kind of a travesty when you think about it, right? We have people in, in charge that, let's take San Francisco, right? They were able to clean it up in a couple of days, right? For the Chinese president to go through, but we can't clean it up otherwise, right? Otherwise, it's a mess.
Exactly.
So that goes to show you that there's things we can do to take care of things in our republic that we don't do. We choose not to do, for whatever reason, And I don't know what the thought process is with some of these people, um, but based on what I see, their thought process sucks ass.
Oh, definitely. I mean, they clean it up for a day, and after everybody's gone, a week later, it'll be back to the same old, same old.
Yep, but they can clean it up. That's the thing, right? They can actually clean it up. So if they can clean it up, they can maintain it cleaned up, right? We don't need to have
Oh,
a visitor from a foreign country come here, um, to pretend that our streets are clean when they're not. I'm sure the president of China knows that San Francisco was a mess before he got there.
oh, I'm sure.
So it's just kind of crazy to me a little bit the way they think. So I want to go into this Argentina election. I don't know if you I know you've heard of what happened.
A little bit. I've been kind of busy this week, but I've kind of heard that there's a guy who I guess he win the election who's more or less like Trump.
Yes, he's a lot of yeah. Um, he made it to the runoff. He it was too close to call the race. I guess a couple months back, so they had a runoff a couple days ago, and he wiped the floor with a competitor in the runoff. Right,
Good.
um, the guy, and I heard him speak a lot like Trump. Um, he's not a conservative in the sense of a U.S. conservative. He's more of a
Right.
libertarian in the U.S. kind of person. But he wants to get rid of their peso. Um, he's got some options. He's thinking about the U.S. dollar, like a lot of countries in South America do, um, to replace their money. He wants to fire everybody that had anything to do with the old administration, which is a good sign.
Yeah.
Um, and he's not an actor, comedian, or movie star. He's an economist, uh, so he knows about financing. Um, and Argentina is a great example of how socialism doesn't work. Right, it doesn't work. So I'm hoping the people in the U.S. pay attention. That there was a revolt in Argentina. People were tired of socialism. People were tired of being told what to do, when to do, and how to do it.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and they didn't riot or anything like that, or I'm sure they have protests, but no rioting. They just voted the jerk out, which is the way it should be. Right?
Yeah. That. I mean, from what I've heard about him, I was like, wow. I said Argentina sounds like they're getting their stuff together.
Well, it's fine time that countries start begin to do that.
Yeah.
We need to stop with the nonsense and allowing people in government to kind of run amok and do whatever they want. Um, we need to make sure they know that we voted you in. We can vote your ass out,
Right.
and stop. You know, just stop it. We're ruining people's lives and people's livelihoods, um, and I don't get it. I just seriously don't get it. Um,
Did you see Biden's birthday cake?
no, I
It
did
had
not.
80 candles on it.
How many?
80 or
He's old.
81.
He's
And they
He's older than 80, isn't he?
I think he's 80 or 81. They
Yeah.
said there were so many candles lit on this thing you could see it. It looked like the entrance to hell.
Oh my god. You know, I actually I feel very sorry for him because I know he doesn't know what's happening,
Oh yeah.
and he's a not that he's allowing. I don't think he realizes that he's being used and abused by people that don't really give a shit about him. Um,
And that's what happens to most people when they get Alzheimer's is they don't know what's happening. They have a long-term memory like he always talks about, well, my father did this, but they don't have that short term. They couldn't
right.
tell you what they had for breakfast yesterday.
Yeah.
You know.
It's sad, and again, I mean, you look at things, and I would hope that my family, regardless of what position I'm in or what my job is, they would try to protect me in the sense and not letting me be embarrassed out there. Um,
Sure.
or it could cause harm to myself or others, right? I mean, it's not just me. It could cause harm to other people, and we shouldn't allow that. We should not allow that. That shouldn't be the norm. Family should protect him and say, you know what, honey, pops, dad, you need to resign the presidency because you're not well. You're not well.
I think the only scary thing about that is what's behind him when he resigns.
Well, you know, I believe, I get what you're saying, but I think that's minimal damage because at the end of the day, she's not going to be able to beat um, any other Democratic candidate. Um, in the
No,
White
but
House.
I
She's
mean,
just not.
in the intermediate time, if he resigned today and she was in there till, January of the next year, what the hell
Well, I
damage
mean,
could she do?
it would still be Obama, so it doesn't really matter. Um, I know what you mean, but I don't believe
Right?
that Biden or her have any real authority, right? I think that somebody is telling them what to do, what to say, when to
Yeah,
say it, how to say it.
Manchurian candidate.
Yeah. So I don't think that's why I don't really think it really is irrelevant if he leaves now because she's not really going to be doing anything. She's going to be doing whatever Obama wants her to do. I mean, I truly believe that. Whether it's Obama
Yeah.
or somebody else, somebody's running the country, and it's not those two.
No, definitely not. I mean, I've heard Jill goes into all the meetings and says, "Oh, he's tired. He's got to go to bed now," and she's kind of his nursing aide. You know, just to help get him through the day.
Yeah.
But I mean, he married her when she turned like 18.
Yep.
He was the babysitter at 6.
Well, but that's okay though, right? It's
Oh,
okay.
I guess I'm still waiting to see the Epstein list.
Unless Trump wins, I don't think we'll ever see that.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
think we'll see it.
and speaking of that, today being the 60th anniversary of JFK's assassination, uh, Trump said when he gets back in, he's going to have all the documentation declassified. I was watching the show a few nights ago. There's at Parkland who first had him,
Right.
and there was a shot here in his neck, and they went in and tried to intubate him through the hole to get him going. Well, the people at Parkland and Bethesda Naval Hospital at the time when they were doing autopsies never talked to each other. So they thought, oh, it was just something else. And he had a head and a hole in his shoulder. So, and they were the small holes. I mean,
Right.
from being in the military, if somebody shoots you, there's a small hole, that's the entrance,
And
and there's a big hole where it goes out.
right.
And so there was another shooter there. From the pictures and everything else, you get shot in the back, your head blows off. There was
That
two shooters.
look, we all anybody with common sense knows that there was more than one shooter there. Who the other shooter was,
Yep.
I will probably never know at this point. But looking at the way everything happened, Ruby killing the shooter, right? Why would Ruby even do that, right? There's no reason for Ruby to
Well,
do that,
Jack Ruby actually
right?
met with some guys at what they call uh, the Egyptian Lounge, which had a section built off to it just for the mob. And I've been in there, and you walk in, and the guy will take you to the back, and he'll show you the room that the mob met in, and it's got all the Sinatra pictures on it and everything else. He was in there the day before he shot him.
Mm.
So whether the mob had their fingerprints on it, the Cubans had them. Uh, there was another show I watched, and it actually had Cubans. When they had Harvey, Lee Harvey a bus ticket on him, and it was
Mhm.
supposed to go up to a safe house. Well, they tracked where this route was, and it was like at a safe house at that time for Cubans. So who knows?
And it's not just even that. If you think about it, our government was involved in that, right?
Oh,
I
most
mean,
definitely.
there's
No,
no way. Just like the picture of the swearing in of Johnson right after that, right?
right,
Come on, give me a break. I mean, you don't even have the decency to wait. Um, I understand the powers have to be transferred. I get all that, right? But to me, that was fairly quick, very unprofessional. Doing it in front of the president's spouse who just lost her husband.
right,
Um, I mean, the look on her face is you can never forget that, right? You can't,
right.
right? No respect shown uh, for the president at that time, and then all the cover up, right? Like,
Oh, I
I
mean, the
mean,
cover. That one of the guys was saying that they put the casket onto the plane, but when it landed at Andrews, it was actually flown to Bethesda in a regular casket like they use for the Vietnam veterans,
right?
and then the casket was driven up to there, so the body was there half an hour before the hearse arrived with the casket. So there was a lot of behind the scenes type things, and one of the things I remember was George Herbert Walker Bush was supposed to be in Houston that day. Well, somebody had a black and white picture of him in behind the fence at Dallas
Huh?
when that happened, and it was kind of like, huh, because he always said, "Oh, I wasn't there," and there was a picture.
Yeah, Mr. CIA himself.
Yeah,
No. So no, I mean, I think most Americans believe there was more than one shooter. I think most Americans believe that our government was involved in this. To what extent, we don't know. Um, but kind of like things that go on today with the DOJ, right?
oh
Um,
yeah,
kind of the similar situation, even back then. And why, right? Why? Because he wanted to be a good man. He wanted to take care of the republic. He
right,
followed the rules. He didn't want to create anything crazy. People will follow him anywhere, right? And not because he was a Navy veteran, because just the way he carried himself. Nobody cared about his personal antics, right? Um, and think about this. This is in the '60s, right? When people would probably care more about his personal antics than we do now, right? Because now
right.
we're like, it's kind of normal, right? When he was doing his things, nobody really focused on that. They just focused on him, the job he was doing in the White House. And that's what we're missing, right? I think that's why um, you know, people don't like Trump because of his posts or things he said. But who
Right.
cares, right?
They get their feelings hurt.
I want you to do a fucking job. That's all I want you to do. I don't
Right.
what you do after you've done your job as president, I don't care. I just don't
Exactly.
care, right? Just do your job. Right? And
Uh,
we need people in all levels of government just to do their jobs. Just to do their job. I don't know if you saw um, a report that the Department of Defense is spending $114 million, or they're asking for $114 million um, to spend on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility,
oh,
right? And and
I saw something that maybe you put out on Facebook or something about that, and I thought, oh my god,
so we're going to spend $114 million on equity and inclusion when people in the military are already protected under the UCMJ, the Uniform
right,
Code of Military Justice, and we're all covered by the Constitution.
right.
So this is just another way to try to appease certain groups. Oh, look what we're doing, right? Because you know what, in the military, if you're not being equal to everybody, you're gonna lose your career, right? There's just no ifs, ands, or but. If you don't follow the rules, you're gonna get separated and lose money, or you get
Right.
fined. You can't. Everybody's included in everything. I don't. I truly don't understand the thought
It-
process behind this.
It's
Um,
because we bow down to all the special interest groups. Not we, but the people in charge bow down to special interest, and they try to attract the votes by doing that. And I mean, it's as clear as the nose on your face that that's what they're trying to do. And it hasn't. And they've been doing it, and it hasn't. It doesn't work, and nobody's. They're not figuring it out yet.
well, I mean, honestly, I can't figure out why they can't figure it out because I mean, to me, everything I do, yeah, well, money's part of it, but you would think at some point as a voter, you would get the message. This guy is a crook, right?
Right.
You think you would get it. Like it didn't take me long to figure out. that Adam Schiff is a piece of shit, right? It didn't take me long to
Right.
figure out that Governor Newsom is an asshole, right? I mean, and
Right.
I'm not, I'm not Einstein, I'm not super
Not
smart, but I know that
not a political soldier.
these guys are manipulating people um, with stupidity, and people buy into the madness. And I don't know, like in Newsom's case, I don't know why. I mean, he can articulate his argument. He does a great job when he's being spoken to and he's talking. But I would look at the results, right?
Oh yeah, or lack of results.
Look at the results, and then come talk to me, right?
Right.
I believe it was yesterday. Can't even remember. A couple of days ago, I posted about 8 costly tax hikes that are going to hit California in
Wow.
2024 if we don't pass the California Taxpayer Protection Initiative, right? So California is moving towards the mileage tax, um, which is 6 cents a mile. So the average person they think drives 15,000 miles. I don't know what they're thinking because I alone drive over 35,000 a year.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and we have 2 cars, and I still drive over 35 on my car. Um, so if you drive 15,000 miles, you're going to end up paying $900 a year um, to pay for the roads, right? Now, mind you, we raise the gas tax to fix the roads, but yet we're going to tax even more, right?
Right.
Then they have this one called utility tax. Um, it's going to be based on your income. So the more you make, the more you're going to pay, even if you use the same as your neighbor, right? Um, how that's fair, I don't have any idea. Um, but
Ridiculous.
that's another one. Then they have the savings tax. It's just another tax to go after your normal bank accounts, right? This one's the one that's interesting to me. The gross receipts tax. It's specifically for small businesses. They're going to be taxed on their transactions, not just their income. So they're going to be paid tax even if they lose money in their business. So no longer for California, you're not going to be able to basically claim a loss.
Wow. I see U-Haul going back in business.
You know? And then income and payroll taxes, um, on top of countless proposed income tax hikes, a new payroll tax for government-run healthcare that's going to cost about 16 grand per household, right? So here we
Government.
are again giving it to illegal aliens, and the taxpayer is going to have to eat that, right? So the one that's really bites me in the ass more than anything is the exit tax. So if you decide you want to move out of California, they're going to impose an exit tax to punish you for leaving the state. Right?
And if you
Uh,
don't pay, what happens?
at this point, I don't know. I, I don't know what would
I'd
happen.
be like, I'm in a different state. Send me a subpoena. I'm ripping it up, and you can't come get me down here.
So, but this is how ridiculous it is in California, and these people still believe in Mr. Newsom. I just, and that doesn't
Well,
include the death tax they passed last year, where, if you leave your home to your kids, the property gets reassessed, and your kids have to pay taxes on the reassessment, even without them selling it. So there's a lot of things that go on in this state that people aren't aware of. And if this Assbite
wow.
decides to run for office, people need to be aware of all the stuff he does in California because he's a dangerous person. He doesn't care. Um, it's all about himself, and people need to know that because he is a sick human being with the things he's doing.
Oh yeah. Well, I
Right?
think on November 30th, there's going to be the DeSantis Newsom debate. So you might want to keep an eye out because maybe DeSantis has got some of those taxes up his sleeve to throw out there. Maybe if they're who live out there, they could go, "What the hell? We didn't know that."
And people are going to watch that debate.
Yeah,
People are going to watch it. It's probably going to get more audience than the Republican debates have,
probably,
because
probably.
um, and it's and to me, I'm still kind of taken back by the debate, um, because to me, it's kind of pointless unless both of those guys are going to meet, in a presidential race at some point. Um,
Right.
right now, it's not really necessary. But I did hear that DeSantis is challenging Trump for a debate. Uh,
Huh.
I heard that the other day.
Trump will probably say the same thing. I'm 50 points ahead of him. What the hell do I need to debate him for?
Yeah, he is. He
Been
definitely
there,
is.
been there, done that.
I think again, I think that Trump is going to be the Republican candidate. Um, I
Yeah.
think that the only trial that would hurt him is if for somehow they bring the January 6th bullshit back. Um, and of course, if they don't release all the evidence, because we know how the DOJ works, right?
And it was funny because the January 6th thing, I heard that one court said, okay, he's guilty, but we can't enforce it because he was the president at the time. So, which is probably the twist, and because you can't indict a sitting president, and at
No.
that time he was a sitting president. So that's why nobody's brought these charges up, and they won't stick. And there's another guy. He was a lieutenant on Capitol Police that said that their intelligence deputy chief knew days, if not weeks, about all these different factions that were going to have stuff happen, and they never mentioned it.
Well,
And
look,
now she left in California as a chief somewhere.
of course she would be.
Yeah,
So, and we all know Pelosi refused to activate the National Guard.
right,
Trump asked for the National Guard, and she
right,
refused. And that tells me a lot about not just what she knew, but how she really feels about the country, right? Because no matter how she felt about Trump, her job is to protect the Capitol, um,
right. And if you know,
regardless regardless of Trump,
and
right?
when they had their hearings, they wouldn't let them bring her in to testify. Why? Because they wanted to keep her off to the side so she couldn't do it. But don't be surprised if she ends up having to go and testify.
Well, I think at some point, if they go hard on Trump for the January 6th um, nonsense, she's gonna have to testify.
Oh, she
Gonna
will.
have to testify. There's no way around it. Because I don't think any of the other cases are gonna amount to squat.
I
Right?
don't think so.
I think the only one that, and I don't think January 6th will amount to squat either, but I think that's the one that could get him in trouble more than any of them.
Yeah, no, he was sitting president
Yeah,
because that really, when it was designed for if you were fighting the Civil War and you were on the Confederate side, you try to do the insurrection, you can no longer be a member of that thing,
right,
that the government. So it all is the way it's just the way it's interpreted.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, it's it, a lot of things are interpretation, but people get caught up um, because
In
they
the
listen to
verbiage,
CNN or
right,
MSNBC or Fox, whatever. They just buy into whatever madness instead of actually doing some research on things. Here's a funny statistic that even I didn't know. As you know, LA County is a big county. We have a little over 10 million people in LA County. Right,
right.
it's a lot of people. I found out a couple weeks ago that only 965, a little over 965,000 are registered Republicans out of the 10 million people.
Oh,
That's it.
wow.
That's it in LA County, right? Um, kind of a dangerous sign, right? Even though it's increasing, I've been told the numbers have increased over last year, um, but not even a million out of 10 million in the
Uh,
city size of Los Angeles, in the county of Los Angeles, which is kind of um, it explains a lot, right? Explains a lot because as LA County goes, the rest of the state goes. They were showing a statistic that even I didn't know, Mike. In the 50s and early 60s, California was a red state. Um,
no kidding.
and mainly because of LA County, right? Because we're so big that the state was usually red. Right? It didn't change until the early 60s. We became kind of a purple state for a while, blue, red, and now we're definitely totally blue. And mainly because of LA County. And
Right?
looking at those numbers, it makes sense, right? As LA County goes, everything else goes in California. Um,
Yeah, we're the same way. We
because
got Baltimore, we got Prince George, and we got Montgomery County. And those three counties out of all of the state run everything. And if you go over the Eastern Shore, Ocean City, Wycomico, Carroll, Hartford, and all these other counties, and they'll vote red, but it don't matter.
yeah, it can be very disheartening. But I mean, I don't expect a red wave, right? But I think there's hopes in some pockets in California in the election process where a Republican can
It sounds like it.
make a strong show, right? Because I think people are tired of the nonsense. Number one, and it's not just a California issue. This is happening everywhere, right? Across the world, across the country. We have elections being fought, really tight. Um, we didn't do as well as we thought we were going to do with the Virginia elections and all that.
Right,
Um, but I believe that at least because of what's happening in Southern California, I won't speak about the north part of the state, but there's a lot of active parents fighting the system. Um, there's people running for school boards, just regular people, right? They're not professors, they're not former teachers. They're just
boots on the
regular
ground.
people that are tired of what's happening in California with our schools. Um,
Oh
I think
yeah,
we're out of all the states, I think we're like 47 or 48 nationwide, and we spend
wow,
more money than almost any state except for New York on education. Right? And we're at the bottom, at the bottom. Our focus is not math, English, science, civics. Our focus is transgenderism, LGBTQT, you know, equality, their version of equality, which isn't my version of equality.
right,
Um, kind of like what the Department of Defense is doing, right? They want $114 million instead of taking care of veterans or even people on active duty. We're going to spend it on inclusion training and equality when we already have rules in place that guarantee that, um, which is the part that I don't know how people buy into it. If you live in the U.S., it kind of like it's already written up. You don't have to worry about it. If somebody violates your rights, you don't need a new law. You could just use the Constitution to put them away.
right.
And we don't really do that. I don't get why we don't do that. So
Well, I heard it last night on a some TV show. There was a lieutenant colonel in the army, and she was 3 months pregnant, but she was also a surgeon. And because she didn't get the vax, she had to go. Now they're calling her back because they don't have enough surgeons. And she says, I ain't going back. You booted me out. Your loss. Oh, well. And she's probably making more money now.
well, and it's funny you say that because a couple of days ago there's a report that came out. Somebody leaked it that the Army was sending letters to all the soldiers that they got rid of because of COVID, wanting
Right,
them to come back because they can't make recruiting goals, right?
right,
So, again, shame on them for abusing people. lying to people. Um, I know many people that they got the vaccine that ended up worse than they were before before COVID hit.
A lot of them.
They used it. They used it against us. They use fear, and you being a law enforcement, you know what fear does to people.
Oh yeah,
It puts you somewhere where um, you've probably never been. Since you don't understand, you're afraid. Kind of like they do with families with BLM, right? If you didn't, follow through with BLM, you were a bigot, right?
yep.
Uh, which is dumb. Right? People don't understand that BLM is a Marxist organization. They're not about freedom for everybody. All they're trying to do is, get you wound up, destroy
Take their money.
property, and take the money and run, right? So, uh, what I'm hoping is that people are actually starting to wake up in today's world. Um, because if we don't, I just have a bad feeling that it'll be
We'll
if
keep
we
doing
can
that.
even if we can recover at some point, it's going to take a long time.
We're going to keep doing that downward spiral.
You know? And I was listening to a speaker a couple weeks ago on a Saturday, um, and he was talking about the approach of the Republican Party to elections, um, which I found very refreshing because I kind of feel the way he does, right? And he specifically was focused on California, specifically because we have all these progressive laws in the books, right? And he was talking about abortions, right? And he says, typical Republican, when you're talking about abortions, is I'm against it, right? And he says, they already know you're against it. I said, why don't we do something different than the Democrats do? And again, it's specifically for California, he was talking. He says, why don't we? Because the Democrats, when somebody wants to have an abortion, all they do is say, okay, have it. It's a free country. You can do whatever you want. He says, why
Right.
don't we give that person options, right, first in California? Hey, if you carry the terms, maybe we can find somebody for you to the babe, some family looking for a child to adopt. You can adopt them
Right.
through us, right? Minimize fees. Don't even charge a fee. Let the people adopt the baby, right? If they meet the criteria. And click, that kind of makes sense. And he says, at least we're offering them something. If they say no, it's California. It's already legal. There's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
So at least give them an option to do something else besides have the abortion right away. Hey, if you carry the terms, we'll take care of you. And I'm even for this. We'll take care of you medically until you have the baby. Then the other family can adopt the baby. That way, we're not destroying another life, right?
Exactly. Sure.
Which is our goal, not to make sure, because, and I'm sure they have this program in Maryland, right, where if you don't want your kid, you can drop them off a police station or a hospital.
Or
People
firehouse. Yeah.
don't normally, people don't really want to do that because they don't want no one to know that they don't want their child, right?
Right.
They don't want to have to sign a document, or they don't want to say nothing. They don't want somebody to make them feel guilty. These are all assumptions they make. So they're not going to go to the local fire station. Here, take my baby. I don't want it, right? Because that's kind of
No,
embarrassing,
they
right?
have they have the other way of they just go ahead and dump it in a dumpster, and then everybody else comes by and goes, "Oh my God, look what we found!" And they'll take it to a firehouse or a police station or whatever, and then they'll try to figure out who it belonged to and go after them for like the abandonment issues.
Right. And 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 if you think about it, it makes sense because it's not that we're pro abortion, but in California we live in a state where it's totally legal, where a 12-year-old can chop off their genitals. So you gotta try to figure a way to bypass the nonsense, and the only way to really do it is being a Republican, right? Because Republicans, we don't have to agree with everything, right? We just the party itself gives you the freedom to disagree with each other
Sure.
on issues, right? But we have the same goal in mind, right? We want everybody to have freedom. We want everybody to do what as they please. We can't continue the fight the way we're fighting it because we're going to keep losing, right? So
Oh
you
yeah.
got to figure out a way of getting people to say, "Huh, okay." you know what? Maybe you're right, Tony. Maybe I shouldn't get an abortion. I'll carry it to terms because you're going to help me find a home for my child, right? Um,
Right.
kind
I
of a more
mean,
humane way of doing it because we
like
can't. Go ahead.
like as I was saying, I had a friend that wanted a child to adopt. They had one of their own, and they wanted to adopt a child, and they had to go to Guatemala to adopt a child. Well, if there makes it a whole lot easier. I mean, see people going to China and Russia and everywhere else to adopt them.
And it should be so complicated, you know, to adopt a child. Basic background checks, kind of thing, but it shouldn't be that difficult to adopt a child, and they make it really difficult in the U.S. to adopt a child. They really do. Um, but giving people options. When he was talking, I'm like, it makes so much sense, right?
Oh, sure.
Because California, he, and this is a true statement. Sea turtle eggs in California have more rights than a fetus, right?
I believe that.
Okay, that is a true statement. That's not made up. Um, so we have to figure a way to bypass the nonsense of California so that we can make a difference. If we can save one or two babies, we're doing great, right? We really are.
Sure.
Um, and I think some people lose focus of that because we can't save all of them. We're not going to. It's just that's real, right? But we can save some if we have a different approach um,
Sure.
to the people that they have the unwanted pregnancies. We can keep pointing fingers. You should know better. You should use birth control. That's not going to solve the problem because you tell a young person don't do this, they're probably going to do it, right? Because you said don't, right? So
Right.
let's figure a way of coaching and mentoring them into our beliefs, right? That we don't believe in killing babies, right? I mean, come on, California, you can do it up until they come out,
The same way that they want to do in Virginia.
right? And that's ridiculous. I mean, how in the hell? There's got to be rules um, that we must follow when it comes to abortions. There's got to be. You
I
just
mean,
can't.
Ralph Northam, the last governor of Virginia, said, "Oh, we can do it all the way up until the time of birth, and then we can just make them comfortable." To me, that is homicide,
It is homicide.
and you get locked up for homicides. And if the government was involved, lock you up with them because you're aiding and abetting.
I totally agree. It's like, and the school issue is really my pet peeve, right? This indoctrination that goes on in the schools, and he talked about that also. He says, we got to be careful when we're speaking, um, and I'm glad he said that because when I spoke at the Glendale Unified School District, I made sure to say it in the same way he wants people to do it, which is we don't want our kids indoctrinated in anything, whether they're LGBTQ or not. It doesn't matter. What we want is for the school to be able to call the parent and say, your child wants to do this, or your child, and it doesn't matter if it's a heterosexual child or I don't know all these other genders that they have. It doesn't matter what they are, even if they're an LGBTQ child and he lives with two dads. Those two dads have a right to know what's happening in the school with with his kids,
Exactly.
right? And I think sometimes when we're speaking, um, we really mean that, but we don't say that, right? Because we assume that people can articulate when we're talking about all children, that we're talking about all children, right? Not just the heterosexual children. And I think that's where the message gets lost because those groups run with that information. Well, he didn't say this specifically. He just said those kids, right? And so they make it an LGBTQ issue when it really should not be that at all, right? And when I spoke at the Glendale School District, I just said, if my child doesn't go to school, you're quick to pick up the phone and dial my home. Where's your child? But if my child wants to cut off her breasts, you're not going to call and tell me. Please explain to me how that's fair. I mean,
Right,
what's
right.
the mentality, right? Um, because I'm going to say this: all parents are going to support their children regardless, right? But we don't have to go to the extreme to have them cut off body parts at 12, 11, 10 years old, and then at 25 they might regret it, right?
And who knows the child better than the parent? It's not the school board.
Right. And really the school board is functioning because the school unions, right, are the ones pushing this, right? And they're the ones donating to politicians. And I'm going to give you a great example. The Glendale Unified School, there's two people running for school board, Jordan Henry and Aneta, and I forget her last name, but Armenian lady. The school district has chosen two people that support the concept of kids can doing whatever they want to do, right? Now,
Yeah,
they're pouring all their money into this, right, through the union. Um, this is why we need to stop the union involvement in elections. I don't care if it's a private union or a public union. They should
right.
not be allowed to donate to any candidate because that candidate is going to owe their soul to these unions because of that, right? First of all, I'm not a big union guy, period, to begin with. I'm not public unions at schools. I'm not into that at all, right? Um, when you have public unions involved, a lot of times they cause more harm than good. Um,
Yeah, I think the only thing the union should be involved in is arbitrage,
right.
and that's it. Other than that, keep your hands off everything else.
Because that's the problem, especially in California. I mean, people don't even think about. I was talking to a group of people last week, um, talking about workers' comp, right? The fraud that happens, and I'll speak about California. We have a lot of fraud, right, in California. Um, People don't get that, and I gave them the scenario, one case I had, um, and they were shocked. I'm like, "Why are you shocked? You just told me there's no workers' comp fraud in California."
Oh,
Right?
bullshit.
We had the guy on video, and I'm gonna have to share this story with you. Um, he had a big old 4x4 truck. He was on the top of the truck washing it. He jumped off the truck. Mind you, his back was injured. And when he came to work every day, he came in a cane like an old man. He was a young kid. Um,
Exactly.
he was also in a basketball league at night in Inglewood. We have him on video playing basketball because we hired a private investigator. We fought him around, submitted all the evidence to the court, and he still got paid off. Right? Still got paid off.
That's weird because you mentioned that it rang bells because I had a divorce case like that. And I sat outside the guy's house as a private investigator, and I took pictures of his big 4x4. And he comes to court with a cane the first time. Well, the judge that I knew from my previous experience on the department was a Navy veteran. He's he could smell bullshit a mile away. And so he continued the case. So the guy comes back into court the second time with a walker. And they asked him, "Could you please stand?" "Oh, no, I can't get up in the stand." Well, because of the photographs that the my clients, he pulled the picture up and says, "But you can get into this truck, right?" And the judge went, "See ya, plaintiff, you win." He loses. And it all depends on these experiences, these judges you get. I
Well,
mean, the ones that have been there forever know bullshit when they smell it.
and they do, um, but it just and I've been in quite a few labor board hearings because of my job. Um, Plenty of lawsuits, workers' comp because of what
Right.
I do. Um, and sometimes they don't even have a real judge there.
The masters.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got people making decisions on feelings and not facts. Right.
Right.
This guy milked the system for 2 years. So we paid him his salary, 40 hours a week. Right. Plus, he got money when the case ended. Even though we had evidence that he wasn't hurt, he still made bank. Right. The only thing we could do is have him sign a statement that he would never work for us again. Right. That's all we
Right.
could do legally. Right. So attorney fees, medical fees, and then of course the attorneys have these special doctors that they send their patients to who are also fraud, but nothing ever happens to any of that, right? And what it does, it jades people, right? So, like, I'll give me as an example. When somebody tells me they get hurt, 99% of the time I don't believe it, right? You could be bleeding, and I'm like, yeah, it's fake blood. You didn't really get hurt, right? Because I'm so jaded over so many years of lies
You're
that
right.
go through the process, right? So it's it hurts. This it doesn't hurt Amazon. It doesn't hurt the big companies, Apple. It's only going to hurt the small businesses. Um, and I think people need to stand up to the politicians that don't support them and say,
And
no, enough is enough. You know,
it's funny you mention that because on my police department, we have a heart and hypertension bill that says if you come down with high blood pressure after you retire, you are covered under workman's comp because it is presumed to be work related that you got this. So when I had my stents put in back in 2004, I
uh-huh,
filed a workman's comp and they took care of it. And when I came back in 2021, had a 6-way heart bypass, the magistrate didn't want to hear that a fireman had the exact same thing and he got workman's comp. So I said, fine, let's take him to circuit court on this. So we took him to circuit court, and wouldn't you know, the county wanted to settle because they knew that somebody done screwed up. I'm still waiting on a payout, but that's been months, months and months and months. But yeah, I mean, you get some of these people just don't want to listen to things. And some people, you have the PI sitting outside the house and you watch a guy fixing his grass and hauling big bags of mulch and all the rest of that. And you just die. And I sit there and I kind of laugh because I was talking to a doctor a few weeks ago.
uh-huh,
And I said, my insurance company wanted me to they asked me if I had a disability. Well, a disability to me, I says, is different things. My mother had polio, leg was fused, had to walk with crutches her whole life. That was a disability.
right.
Somebody that parks in a Walmart shopping center, hangs a little thing on their window, and walks in. I'm going, where's the disability?
That's a that's a big pet peeve for my
Oh,
wife.
oh,
My
mine
wife,
too.
my wife, it drives her nuts. Um, and even people without their tag pull into the handicap. Right? It doesn't really matter. People don't. I think we're just missing a little respect
Right,
on things. And I know nobody wants to go back to the 70s or 60s or 80s, but we need to go back to respecting each other a little more. And I
right,
think that'll go a long way solving a lot of issues, right? Because if you teach your kids respect from the beginning, right, like I would never dare to tell my neighbor "f you" when I was a kid. You know what I mean? I would never think
right.
of doing that. Matter of fact, if the neighbor said, "I'm gonna tell your dad," I would be afraid, right? I mean, because you don't want to get in trouble. Um,
You don't want to get the ass whipping from your dad.
yeah, I mean, we've lost respect for people in general. We don't really know our neighbors anymore. They don't want to get involved in anything. Um, and I've done a lot of events, cleanup events, and it's always the same group of people, right? You never see anybody new. Everybody says, "Oh, great job, thank you," but nobody wants to volunteer for a couple hours. Nobody wants
Right.
to volunteer, um, and that's the sad part that we don't want to take care of our own. We expect the streets to look clean, but it's not our responsibility, right?
Not mine, right?
We expect to be safe, but it's not my responsibility to help somebody that's getting hurt or call the 911 for somebody else. That's not my problem. right? It's somebody else's problem, right? So kind of like when you see an accident on a freeway, there's some people that call, and everybody else is assuming that somebody's calling because of the accident. Maybe nobody's calling. You don't know, right?
Well,
Somebody could be hurt.
if it's the ass that just went speeding by me and I see the accident, I go by and clap
Oh no, if
because
it's that ass, yeah. But if it's somebody else, I would say, at least call,
yo,
or
yeah,
kind of like nobody. If you tell somebody good morning, at least in California, there's a good 70% chance they're going to give you a look like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
no, yeah, not out here. Not. I talk to everybody. I see a guy in the grocery store has got a Vietnam veteran hat on, and he'll be in an aisle, older black gentleman, and I'll say, "Hey, thank you for the service for our country," and he would say, "Oh, did you serve?" I said, "No, sir, I didn't." But we'll develop a conversation and a
Right.
rapport. And, by the time you're all finished talking and you leave the checkout lines together, hey, it was nice talking to you.
Yeah. There's
That's what it's about.
nothing wrong with being friendly to people,
Not at
um,
all.
common courtesy, even just talking to people. There's nothing wrong with that. Um,
Right?
and I think we're just missing all that. We're so caught up on pointing fingers and calling people bigots or racist, or you're dumb because you don't believe in what I believe in. You're dumb because you don't want the government to take care of you, or you're a horrible person because you want to own a gun. Um, Dumb shit. I mean, and it happens really in every group, whether it's government or
Oh, yeah.
organizations. They're constant fighting and bickering over nonsense, right? I went to breakfast Sunday. Was it Sunday? I can't even remember. To this restaurant near here, and the owner of the restaurant was talking to me about the nonsense at the American Legion that I belong to. Right?
Oh, right.
She has nothing to do with the American Legion, but she knows all the gossip about what's going on, right? The drama. So we have grown men, and they're grown veterans that are putting out different versions of the real story to the neighborhood, right? To the neighborhood. And I'm just sitting there shaking my head, going, "These guys, we definitely need a change in leadership at My American Legion, because
No,
there's too much of that tick for tat stuff that it just needs to stop."
save the drama for your
Kind of
mama.
like, yeah, I mean, come on. I, and as you know, I'm a vet. I had never joined. I only joined the American Legion because my brother-in-law asked me to join. I've never been a big fan of the American Legion, um, because I heard all the drama before I joined. And he said, "No, it's different." I said, "All right, I'll join."
So now you
Um,
smacked him.
oh, I let him have it. I'm like, "Come on, man, you lied to me." Um, um, but it just goes to show you that it's just a problem overall in society, right? People,
Yeah, sure.
instead of trying to resolve the issues, nobody wants to come to an agreement. They'd rather just keep fighting, right? Instead of saying, "Okay, I can do 50% of what you want, and then I'm asking you to do 50% of what I want." Right? Coming to an agreement with something, right? Instead of always arguing, and hurting the community, really, because that's all they do when they argue, right? Um, for many years, they had the haunted house at the American Legion post that I belong to, and this year, because of the nonsense, they moved it to another post. So yeah, they were trying to prove a point to my legion, my group, but who did they really screw? They screwed the kids in the neighborhood that normally go to that haunted house.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
They didn't screw the commander or his staff. They screwed the kids. Nobody thought about the kids. Not one of them.
Yep. People over politics, stupid.
Yeah,
Yep.
common sense, right? Common sense, right?
You
That
got it.
there's no, and I was talking to somebody last Saturday at that event where the speaker was at. And I'm like, I don't understand why we make promises we know we can't keep. We know we can't keep. We know it, right? We can't change the federal government overnight. No way, right? We can't even change local government overnight. No way, right? You can't cut anything overnight. No way, right? So let's focus on what we could the things that we can affect change immediately, right? The things that we can focus on, right? And it's funny because I know a lot of people running. Running out of time. You're going to finish. Um, but they all attack the same thing. Why don't we just, if we're all running for the same offices in different areas, why don't we just combine our efforts? Okay, Tony, you focus on parental rights and education. I'll focus on public safety. Uh, Johnny, you can focus on businesses. That way, we know that way we can address everything, right? Because you need
Right.
more than one person fighting for all these things. Right? You just can't, one person, you can't fight for public safety, parental rights, school choice, homeless, and win all those battles. You can't.
No, no way.
You gotta have other people. You gotta have other people on the team that are specifically focused on that battle, so that you can take the other flank and attack
There,
that.
there is
That then we can start making.
there is no I in
Nope, there
no
isn't.
I in team.
There is
Yep,
nope.
you
Well, Mike,
got it.
thanks for being on tonight. Thank you
Problem,
so
gentlemen.
much. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your loved ones. Happy Thanksgiving to
You
everybody
too.
out there.
Here's
Oh, I'm gonna eat a lot tomorrow. I know I am.
me too.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. Um, I am running for California Assembly District 44, which includes Burbank, Glendale, La Crescenta, Montrose, Salentahunga, Valley Village, um, Lakeview Terrace, Shadow Hills, and some parts of northern Burbank. Um, Follow me. My website is Tony the number four California.us. All my information on there. Click on the donate button because I need your help. I am running against six different candidates. One of them is being supported by Gavin Newsom and Laura Friedman. So I definitely want to make sure that he doesn't get the job at any cost. Um, but thank you for joining us. Have a safe and happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Good night.
And Tony's the man.
Thanks, Mike.